Hey guys, in today's video I'm going to preview the 2024 US Open men's semifinals. I'm going to start with the bottom half of the draw, Fritz versus Tiafoe. First of all, it's fantastic for American tennis that we have not only two American male players in the semifinals, but also two American female players. But for you guys that watched my prediction video, you know that I picked Fritz to lose to Berrettini in the second round, and now that looks like a horrible pick to make, but let me explain why I made that pick. See, if you remember Wimbledon, I thought Fritz had a golden opportunity to make the Wimbledon final. He beat Zverev in the fourth round, which I thought was a great win, 5-set match. And then he played Musetti in the quarters. And remember, Djokovic was not on the top of his game. And the winner of Fritz, Musetti, was going to play Djokovic in the semis. And Fritz ended up losing to Musetti in 5 sets. And I thought that Fritz was going to take this loss hard. And he did. He went to the Olympics, lost to Musetti again. He did win the bronze medal in doubles, but at the hardcourt tournaments, Fritz did not play well. He lost to Korda in the second round in Montreal, and then lost to Nakashima in the first round in Cincinnati. On the other hand, Berrettini had played really well on clay, won 2 tournaments in a row. So for me, this made sense to pick Berrettini over Fritz because Fritz was struggling. But I have to tell you, out of all the top Americans, and we have 5 of them in the top 20, I always thought that Fritz was going to have the best career. I always thought that Fritz stood slightly above them as far as his level is concerned. And I was very impressed with Fritz winning Indian Wells. That's a huge tournament on US soil, a Masters 1000, and Fritz has that in his bag, which the other players don't. So Fritz has incredible potential to do big things on the tennis court. One of the best serves in the world, moves well, very good forehand, a rock solid backhand, can come in and finish points off at the net. He's just a great all-around player with big weapons. I saw Fritz's girlfriend share a note that Taylor wrote to himself a while back, and I'm going to paraphrase. He said, "You're ranked 40 in the world, but you're much better than that. Get your act together and start maximizing your potential." And at this US Open, being on the bottom half of the draw, especially with Djokovic going out early, which is such a huge barrier for a lot of these players in Grand Slam tournaments, Fritz has a golden opportunity to make the final, and he's capitalizing on it. He played an exceptional match against Zverev in the quarterfinals, playing aggressive, dictating the points, serving well, and playing his best tennis when he needed it the most. Now Zverev, on the other hand, is a very interesting story because he did not play well in this match. He said that this is the worst he's hit his backhand in his entire career. He was not only missing backhands out by a lot, but even when he tried to get the backhand in play, trying to hit it soft, he was dumping backhands into the net. He was missing easy backhands when the ball was right there for him. He said that normally you can wake him up at 3 a.m. and he could make one backhand after another, but for some reason in this match, his backhand was simply not working. And if you compare Zverev's level in the match against Fritz to how he played at the French Open, especially in that Rafa match where Zverev was hitting the best I've ever seen him hit off the ground, and even at some portions in the final against Alcaraz, compare that to how Zverev was playing from the baseline in the match against Fritz, there's a stark difference. And if you look at Zverev's results post the French Open final, I think that final hurt him a lot because he was very close to winning a Grand Slam tournament. That's the only thing that Zverev needs to complete his fabulous career, is a Grand Slam title. And he was very close a couple of times and he couldn't get the job done. And I think this is still somewhere in the back of his mind because I watched him play at Wimbledon. I thought he didn't play well there, lost to Fritz. Then I watched him play in the final in Hamburg, which I thought was a very poor performance mentally speaking. And I thought he played pretty well in Cincinnati, almost beating Sinner in the semis. So that's why I picked him to go through the final on the bottom half of the draw. But something's off with Zverev. But just like Fritz was able to turn his form around and start playing his best tennis at the US Open, I think Zverev can do that too. It's going to be interesting to see how Zverev does for the remainder of the year because he's doing well rankings-wise. If he would have beaten Fritz, he would have gone up to number 2 in the world. And Dimitrov versus Tiafoe was a shame that it ended early because both of these guys are so fun to watch. I made a video yesterday on Tiafoe's unorthodox forehand, backhand, and serve technique. I recommend that you check this out. I went deep into technique technique. I studied Tiafoe's strokes back in the junior days. I'm going to link that video in the pinned comment. And Tiafoe did play extremely well against Dimitrov. As I said previously, it's almost as if Tiafoe sometimes has too many tools in his bag, and he ends up making poor choices on the court and makes a lot of unforced errors. So to me, it's all about how clean Tiafoe can play a match is going to determine how successful he's going to be, because he does use the crowd to his advantage. But if he can stay away from low percentage shots, if he can play high percentage tennis, he's got a very good chance to beat Fritz. Now, it's going to be tough to predict who's going to win that match, because if you look at the head-to-head, it's 6-1 for Fritz. Now, the graphic there says 6-3 Fritz, but they're counting 2 ITF junior matches that Tiafoe won. But on tour, Tiafoe won the first time they played in 2016 at Indian Wells, and after that, Fritz won 6 in a row. So Fritz has the upper hand against Tiafoe mentally speaking, and you could make the logical argument that Fritz is going to win the important points and come out as the winner in this match. But this tournament has been so crazy. There's been so many upsets. Now look, I made the mistake of not picking Fritz over Berrettini, and I'm not going to make that mistake twice. I paid my price dearly by having my bottom half of the draw busted. So this time, I am going to pick Fritz to beat Tiafoe and make the US Open final. Now, speaking of surprises, Draper ends up beating de Minaur in straight sets. And Draper is a player with huge potential. Not only does he have one of the best serves in the world, but he also happens to be lefty and hits a heavy topspin forehand and is able to open up the court. And when you have that combination, a great lefty serve, the ability to open the court as a lefty, you are going to be tough to deal with. De Minaur didn't have much of a chance. Draper played an excellent match. I will note, however, that de Minaur was not on the absolute top of his game. There's still possibly something going on with his hip, an injury that he sustained at Wimbledon. And let me just say this. On de Minaur, there is a thing going on the internet that de Minaur doesn't deserve to be in the top 10 and that he's a terrible player with no weapons and that his spin rate on the forehand is super low compared to the other guys. People don't understand the quality of player that you have to be able to beat Djokovic. Remember, de Minaur beat Djokovic earlier this year at the United Cup. He also beat Zverev. He also beat Nadal on clay in Spain. Of course, it's not prime Nadal, but still. De Minaur is an amazing player, and yes, he might not have the same power as Alcaraz. He doesn't have the same serve as Zverev, but he has his strengths, has his weaknesses, and he manages to win matches with what he has, and he does an exceptional job. He's one of the fastest guys on tour, and tennis is not all about hitting winners. It is not an accident that de Minaur is a top 10 player and has the chance to finish in the top 8 and make the year-end championship. So when I see disrespect thrown in the direction of de Minaur, I don't like seeing that. De Minaur is a phenomenal tennis player, despite not having the same weapons as some of the other guys on tour. Now, Sinner against Medvedev went as I expected. I feel like Sinner is finding the form that he had earlier this year. He is the hardest ball striker on tour. The speed of his shot, the weight of his shot is too much to handle, even for somebody as good as Medvedev. Now, Medvedev did do well yesterday, especially in the second set. Some of those backhand-to-backhand cross-court rallies were absolutely insane. Medvedev is an absolute wall back there. And he tried different things in the match. In the press conference, he actually thought that he played well. But when Sinner plays like this, it's just a tough hurdle to overcome. So Draper against Sinner in the semis. These guys are friends, and head-to-head is 1-0 for Draper, okay? So logically, you have to go with Draper, don't you? Well, this was a while back on grass, and it doesn't really mean that much because playing the semifinals of a Grand Slam for the first time is not an easy thing. That's going to be a tough match for Draper, and I do expect straight set victory from Sinner.